Thank you. Yes, Dan.
Thank you, Mayor. Kyle, for the residents that are here, I was going to ask this at the end, but if we could just do it now, if we could just have an item on our next council agenda regarding, I guess we could be classified under city issues, just to talk about noise, so that way we can have a discussion about that. I think we have 3 different noise issues that were brought up tonight, so if we can put something on there, it allows us to work through it some. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, we'll move on to the regular agenda. Number 1, consideration and possible action to approve participation in the state of Texas's settlement with litigants in opioid litigation. Approve the adoption of the Texas term sheet and its intrastate allocation schedule, and authorize the city manager to execute the subdivision settlement participation forms and any other documents needed to participate in the settlement. Kyle? Bobby?
Yes, Mayor, if you remember from our briefing last time, the state of Texas and other states have entered into settlement agreements with the manufacturers of the opioid medications. As part of the settlement, some of that money is trickling to the states and is available to certain municipalities if you sign on to the term sheet. So we discussed that last time, and if you're amenable to signing on and joining the state of Texas, and I think most municipalities have signed on, we would be eligible for about $15,000, which can be used for certain specific uses, generally some medical-related uses involved with combating the opioid addiction problem. So if council wants to take part in this, then we have to approve the documents that the state of Texas has given to us, and they're cited in the agenda item.
All right, and we had a prior discussion about this, and so I'm going to call on Councilmember Albert to reinforce what we might be able to use these monies for.
Thank you. So after the city manager and the city attorney brought this to us, I did some research and talked to some of my colleagues. I think the best use, after looking at all the items that are on the list, a good number of the items on the list we're not going to be able to provide. We don't have inpatient services. We don't have our own health department. There's not a lot of things we can do. There's also not a ton of money. How much? I don't remember. It was like $12,000 or $15,000.
Around $15,000.
I mean, and that's not a whole lot of money. I think the best use that we can get the best bang for our buck would be to train our police department in the use of Narcan, which is an antagonist to opioids. The benefit from that would be, and then obviously for us to purchase now and over the course of several years, replace anything that we end up using or gets expired, to be able to put these antidote kits on all the police cruisers. They could be used. In my jurisdiction where I work, we had at least one instance that a sheriff's deputy, while issuing a warrant, was overcome by fentanyl that was in the air when they went into a house, and so the crews, his fellow cops on the scene were able to administer the Narcan and bring it around. So it's a life-saving thing. In the event that our cops are trained to do this and have the antidote, that any prisoner that they take in that may be suffering from an opioid overdose, they don't have to wait on the ambulance to get there to treat them, which can often be a problem and something that we may not have had issues with, but as the city grows could. But also if the police department is on the scene before the ambulance of an opioid crisis, then they would have this antidote available as well. So it furthers what our abilities to do. I reached out to one of my colleagues and forwarded to the city manager some information that she's willing to, if we take this measure up, she's willing to provide the education to Chief Trailer's department at no cost to us. In addition, she was willing to provide T-Cole credit for the officers that attend the class to be able to get continuing education credit. So I think it's a great program that we might as well take advantage of.
Thank you for for going to those links with the contacts that you have to make sure that our guys have the right training And then they'll have the bonus of the credits as well. So, thank you. All right, so do I have a motion to, oh, yes, sir.
One question real quick. Is anything with this tonight us actually allocating the funds to that purpose, or that will be at a future meeting where we have to take that action?
We would actually have to receive the money, and then we'd come back to the council for an allocation of those funds for at that time.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Kyle. Thank you, Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve the participation in the state of Texas's settlement with litigants in opioid litigation.
I'll second it.
All those in favor? All those opposed? And the motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Consideration and possible action to approve ordinance 2021-0-38. An ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-0-30, amending the city fiscal year 2021 budget ending September 30th, 2021 by amending various budgets to account for year-end additional revenues and expenditures, directing the budget officer to file or cause to be filed a copy of the amended budget with the city secretary and with the office of the Brazoria County Clerk, and providing this ordinance shall become effective from and after its passage and adoption. Mr. Chris.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Here for the fun part of the year that everybody also looks forward to, doing our budget cleanup. To me, it seems like it was a little bit simpler than it was last year. There were a couple of complicated issues coming about from us closing out the capital projects fund that was used whenever a bond issuance was done. We consolidated those two, and there was a rather large number that was moved last year that kind of gave people some pause. This one is pretty much a little bit more straightforward than it was last year. All of the departments have a little bit of cleanup needed to be done. Some of them are as easy as one line going one way or the other. Some of them are things of actually our vehicle replacement fund needed an extra revenue stream and an extra expenditure because during the year one of our police vehicles was totaled and we had to get the insurance money. So we've had to adjust the revenue and the expenditure in that department, that fund. In the debt service fund, we had it so that it was set up that MEDC would transfer money to cover one of the bonds, when in actuality it wasn't a transfer because they do maintain their own separate bank account. So it wasn't a transfer as much as it was them paying us, and we needed to recognize the revenue on their part and the expenditure on our part. So it's just little minor things like that that changed it from a transfer to an actual income/expenditure in both the debt service fund and in Fund 90. The majority of the things that got changed were in the police department and the administration department, where frankly most of the funds are spent, and you have a hard time nailing down exactly what's going to be spent in each line item when you're talking about June and July of the previous year. So at the end of the year, we have to do these cleanups. We have to make sure that we don't overspend on our line items so that we don't get dinged by the auditors. And this is for your this is the presentation for your convenience for you to look over and have any questions for.
All right. Is there any discussion?
I'll kick us off. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay.
And Kyle, I know, I wanted to see if anybody wanted to go first. So, and Chris, by the way, I commented earlier, I'll comment again, great haircut. I think I'm gonna have to follow your lead very soon, and Councilmember Albert says amen to that. So I sent these questions in advance, and I just appreciate the response that you provided us, Kyle. Just kind of wanted to go through some of them. One of the things that the charter states is that any excess revenue that we receive at any point in time during the year should be presented to council for our allocation. And so the exhibit provided to us is showing our expenditures, not necessarily the excess revenue that we received. And so one of the things that I want to know with that, what's the process going to look like to allocate that excess revenue out? I'm assuming now we just have to drop it into the unused fund balance. And the other thing is I'm curious as to why we weren't notified at the time whenever we identified, okay, line item 10-04-4207, which is plat fees, that's over by $65,000 or $20,000 whenever it went over. why weren't we notified then? So that way we could reallocate it and then put it to use.
Okay, and where in the, I'm not sure if I understand where in the charter it says that you're needed to be notified of the excess in revenues, which I think you sent us a few items, but I don't remember that being one of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I can pull that up here. And while I pull that up, we'll come back to that. One of the questions that I have is that it looks like we have overages for some of our expenditures. When you're doing a year-end cleanup, that means the money was already spent in the previous fiscal year. And so now you're amending your budget to make sure that the budget reflects what you actually spent. But whenever we overspend in a specific line item, the city manager has the authority within a department to move around money between the line items. But the charter says that we are to be within 30 days notified that this money was moved in between line items. Can you guys kind of speak to that?
The 30-day notification is only if we move it between departments. Most of ours, as I said, with this is not done in departments, it's done interdepartmentally. Pretty much everyone stayed under their budget. I believe everyone did actually this year, stayed under their departmental budget. So all the moves became just a matter of cleaning up their department by themselves. We didn't have to say, take from the Development Services Department, move it over to the PD to cover anything like that. So those don't need to be recognized. Only when it's going between departments, and usually we will let you know. For example, when we bought the vacuum truck, we made adjustments to the revenue so that we could move it into the Public Works Department to pay for that. That's things that we let you know. Those were interdepartmental moves that you need to be made aware of, and that's when we go into action on these little minor details where they're just cleaning them up. Those don't require any kind of notification according to the charter, except for the fact that at the end of the year we need to let you know so that you know what we're moving around so that the auditors come in and give us a clean bill of health.
Okay, I appreciate that answer. What I'm specifically referencing to is section 8.16. And the last line of that section says the city manager shall within 30 days of the transfer make written reports of all transfers to the city council or as directed by the order of city council. And I'll read out the entire section just for the sake of this. It says at any time during the fiscal year, the city manager may transfer part or all of any unencumbered appropriation balance for operations. And then it goes on to say that upon written request by the city manager, we as council by ordinance can transfer a part or all of an unencumbered appropriation from one department to the other. But that last sentence does not specify in which transfer that it's referencing. So the way that I reasonably interpret that is whenever a transfer does occur, whether it's in between lines or whether it's between departments, there needs to be a 30-day report about that transfer of all transfers to city council.
Mayor?
The middle sentence in that actually says, upon written request by the city manager, the council may, by ordinance, transfer part or all of the encumbered appropriation balance from one department, office, or agency to another. Then it tells you that we need, within 30 days, make a written report of all transfers to the city council or as directed by order of the city council. So if you have to go in and we have to get an ordinance from you or an order from you to change from one department to another, that's when we need to provide you the 30 days.
First, Mayor, one of the other things, obviously, this time last year, and it's kind of what I mentioned in the email that I sent you. The council asked for a mid-year, a three-quarter, and a year-end budget amendment. The transfer that you're referring to is happening in this budget amendment. I told you that there was going to be some changes that will be done mid-year, three-quarters, and that the final budget amendment, we could have done it in September, but we wouldn't have had all the revenue yet. This is when we're doing the actual transfer, this year-end cleanup. It could have been done, but we would have had to come back and do another year-end transfer or year-end cleanup because we wouldn't have had the last 2 months of revenue from sales tax, and we wouldn't have had revenue from franchise fees that had been paid. So we could have done it in September, but what we did was we told you that in December, once we get all of the revenue in, we do 1 year-end cleanup. That's what this transfer is, and that's when the transfer is actually being made.
Kyle, and I appreciate that statement. The counter statement that I would have to that is this money's already been spent. And so the money was spent in excess of what council appropriated. Now, very wisely, we gave you the authority that if you need to move it within, or the council at the time that this charter was adopted, gave you the authority to transfer within a department between lines, because at times that excess is going to happen. But as the stewards of the finances for the taxpayers, there was a line built in that says that when money's been transferred, that there's a 30-day notice given to city council of that transfer. And so you've transferred the funds because the funds have been spent on something else. And yes, we regardless will need to clean up the budget. But that 30-day notice of the transfer is the way I interpret it at least, and I could be wrong, but the way I interpret it is that 30-day notice is irregardless of the budget cleanup.
The transfers haven't been done yet. Each of the departments, it totaled about $3 million of council-approved expenditures for the departments. So the city did not spend over $3 million of council-approved expenditures. The transfer that you're talking about would clear up any of the line items inside of the departments that didn't overspend any of those departments. And the transfer is being made with this budget amendment. This is the thing that's making the transfer.
Okay. So I appreciate that. I want to hit back on the item that I had for revenue, and then Mayor, I'll open it up to anybody else for comments or questions. And Chris, the section in the charter is section 8.14 regarding supplemental appropriations. It says if during the fiscal year, the city manager certifies that there are available for appropriation revenues in excess of those estimated in the budget, the council by ordinance may make supplemental appropriations for the year up to the amount of such excess. So since we had that come in, I'm just wondering, is there a specific reason why we weren't notified at that time to say, hey, let's do something with this excess? That might be something we look at from a process standpoint moving forward, because if we can leverage the excess revenue that we have within a given fiscal year, especially if there's a need, the police chief comes and says, or Tammy comes, or Jessica, they say, hey, this is what we need, then we can start to leverage that now instead of just rolling it into the unused fund balance and hopefully pulling from it for the future.
One other thing, in the approved budget, the council approved revenues of $11,583,393. As of the end of September, we were underfunded by revenue by $437,000. So again, individual line items may have come in over what the estimated budget is, but actually we came in $430,000 under what the projected revenue was. Again, $3 million of approved expenditures were not spent, but $430,000, give or take, of projected revenue was not collected. So again, there may have been individual line items that may have collected more, but we didn't actually hit the budget of that $11,500,000.
And that's a valid point, but I think we're splitting hairs with that. Because the situation would be is, unless we're going through the monthly financials that you guys send, which I appreciate y'all sending those, unless we're going through those with a fine-tooth comb, the plat fees was over about $65,000. And so whenever that happens, because I don't know at what point in the year that overage was triggered, if you guys come to council and say, hey, we're projecting we're going to continue to have an overage with this specific line item, then we could say, all right, Jessica, we're going to get you an administrative assistant and maybe do that earlier instead of making that decision during the budget year. I'll just say to this that I think there's an opportunity to maybe fine-tune the process for how council's notified regarding when excesses come. So that way there can be a dialogue with staff and council about what do we want to do with this additional revenue whenever it comes in. So that way, if we do have excess in a specific line item, if we want to take that from one department to another, an ordinance can be presented to us for us to then adopt and move forward with. So that's what I have for now, Mayor. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just kind of along those lines, a lot of times we don't know we're going to have excess, not access. This year, for instance, the county decided that they weren't going to help us with paving our roads. That was a $300,000 expenditure that we had set aside. We're waiting for you guys to come help pave our roads, please, and they just didn't do it. So we can't tell you, hey, we've got $300,000 extra dollars, because what if on September 29th, they come to us and say, hey, we're fixing to pave your roads, get that $300,000 check ready for you. Well, we've come to you and said, oops, we thought we were going to have $300,000 extra, but they're just taking it back from us. That's the kind of trap that we're in, and that's also kind of the trap we're in with some of these line items that we're adjusting at the end of the year. During the year, I could do a monthly budget revision, but I would come to you and tell you, hey, we need to take from this account and put it into that account. And then the next month, maybe, oops, I stole from the wrong account because we had huge expenditure here. I generally have to wait until September 30th and get all these numbers to figure out, okay, who can I take from and put it into this spot to make sure that we're covered and not at the same time shoot myself in the foot and go under on this expenditure. That's kind of the way we're handcuffed. It's just a matter of timing, and I really wish we could come to you in August and say, I guarantee you that we will have $1.3 million. You guys need to find some way to spend that $1.3 million. Because as soon as I say that, someone will find a way to spend that $1.3 million, and I'll be left holding the bag and really looking silly telling you guys that we had plenty of money, and oops, it's gone now.
Anybody else?
Sorry.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Obviously, if the council has a direction, we'll be more than willing to take that, make any changes that you would like us to make in the way that we provide that information to you.
Well, yeah, I think there's a practical issue here, and it's the reason that the city manager has the ability to move money within a department. And that is, okay, Platts came in, whatever, $65,000 under. That being the case, the city manager is looking at that department and can utilize that money within that department through the course of the year. I think there is, I think there's something reasonable about that. Because again, with Chris's explanation and example, if we said, oops, we got $65,000, yay, we'll run with it, and then we need that money within that department for another reason, I think we are, again, shooting ourselves in the foot. I mean, there's a reason that it's set up the way that it is, and I personally feel like we leave well enough alone. Jason? No, excuse me, Lorraine. Oh, Jason?
I want to go with the mayor on this, with that. I wanted to understand, so this charter that Dan was, according to the charter, it only differs whenever, or comes into play whenever you're moving money from department to department because we're short somewhere, not necessarily, we don't have enough pens in this area, we need more paper, we're going to move it to another line item, right? Did I understand that correctly?
That's the way I interpreted that.
Because otherwise, I mean, I'll give a couple examples right now that are real life. I do think we get a lot of information, and we talk a lot about how much information we're getting all the time, and we might need more, less, all the time information that we all read. I hope we all read. But the thing with the budgets is I know they're ever changing, and at any time, this council can come and ask for money to move something for any kind of project at any time. And you guys are tasked with finding it or telling us authentically, can we actually do this thing without going into the general fund? Give an example. We just paid the police department a lot of money. We had no money budgeted for that. It just came to us. It was something we needed to do. We did it. It passed. We got the money. It came in a piece of paper just like that, and you had to ask us permission. So all of the big pieces of money that move, we come to you and give you direction, and you tell us whether we can or cannot do it or whether it's wise to do it, right? Is that right? So, good example of Sedona Lakes. They do not pay city taxes, but they're asking us to use our police officers to go and enforce their laws, just to do it. Who's gonna pay for that? So we're gonna have to all talk about it at some point and find out how that's gonna get paid for, if we decide to do it. And so coming to you all the time for money is just something that we do all the time. So I'm very comfortable and always have, because our reports have always come back with good standings with our auditors about all of our interactions. And I think we do a really good job as council asking a lot of questions about what's here. And so I don't know that, just like that Deborah said, leave well enough alone, that I don't want to put any more pressure on you guys to provide more reports, more information, more data, more, and come to us more and more, when I guess the charter says you're only supposed to let us know if it's from department to department. Is that correct? I just want to be clear that that's what that really means. I know Dan had his interpretation, but is that what that means, that you're supposed to let us know when it's department to department?
Usually that's what councils want to know, are the big transfers, and department to department might reveal that there's a problem, or why is, police department low and need something to cover? Is it overtime issue or something like that? Usually the council isn't involved with, oh gosh, there's an office supply deficit, and we covered it by travel, so we moved the travel line item money in to cover the office. I mean, usually that's not what councils are looking for, but like Dan said, in the charter, it says that, it can be done as directed by order of the city council. So if council wants a different level of detail as to the reporting of what's going on as far as transfers, then like Kyle said, we can talk about that. But generally, I think that's how the charter works. I mean, I think it's supposed to be really that it's the big stuff, not the little bitty things going on in between line items. But that's how I would interpret it.
Yeah, and as long as I've been here, that's how I've interpreted it too. I just didn't. I think that's been our practice.
What we actually have done. But
Jason?
Well, I think I expressed this concern last year, and I'm going to express the same concern this year. Is it feels like you've already spent the money, and we had agreed that you were going to spend the money on something else. I've asked several times to have reports provided to me that have not gotten, asking for a actual year-to-date by budget line, what we budgeted and what we've spent, so that we can look for these things. For example, and last year I brought up the point that, we didn't buy $15,000 worth of small tools. Well, what did you buy instead? What did you use that other $15,000 for? The way that the information you provided me again this year in this budget amendment doesn't tell me what we over or under budgeted. The revenue part, I get that the state's not going to get you all the sales tax revenue, and I understand that completely. But when I see that we're putting all this money back in the general fund, it makes me wonder why are we so off? Thankfully we didn't spend the $250,000 in the disaster. I'm gonna give you that one. That you're off the hook on that one. But why did we budget, why did we budget $55,000 for minor tools and equipment, only by $18,000? What do we not need any? Or do your guys have everything they need? When I see that, it makes me think we didn't do everything we said we were going to do this year, and so I want to know why. Why didn't we do everything we intended to do this year? And when this comes at the end of the year, it's too late. The year's gone. And when I see that inflation is way beyond what we were able to afford to give for raises for our staff, there's a whole lot of money here that could have gone to that. In each line item, I see that there's a whole lot of money that we could have done more with, and we didn't. So how do you answer those questions?
There's, I think there's three main transfers that are included in here. We're moving $650,000 to go with an additional $350,000 that's going to go to pay for the elevated storage tower, the water tower. There's about $429,000 that's going to parks, and there's $100,000 that's going from the general fund to the utilities fund. We're getting closer that the utility fund is paying for itself, but it's still short by $100,000 or so. The other ones are inside of the departments, and you're not moving money from one department to another. It's still ending as a positive for what the city had budgeted by department. And those are the only three that are transfers out. It's 2 capital projects, 2 parks, and then 2 utilities. The rest of them are internal to the individual departments. And even with that roughly $1.5 million transfer out, you're still ending the general fund at more than $1.1 million. So it's, even though we budgeted more expenditures, we're ending it at a better rate than what we anticipated.
Lorraine?
So then why is that a bad thing, that you budget good, y'all spend very conservatively, and then we have a bunch of money left to move back in our savings? Why, I don't understand why that's bad.
Because if we tax based on the budget that we have. If we didn't need that much money, then we didn't need to tax as much as.
Well, don't you agree that we got stuff to do with it, good, big things?
Yeah, if we were
places?
doing stuff with it, this is not a discussion, I apologize.
I apologize, but I think I'm just going back. Yes, I know, not a discussion. Making a statement out loud like this, like I'm talking to everybody. Yes. It's a good thing that we have more money, and yes, we did. And tax rate went down, which is awesome, because we still had more money left over, even though our tax rate went down. So that's a good thing, and we still have that money left over to do great things with. We've got that grant money that came in, that ARPA money come in. That's a good thing to use the money that we have, and we're not taking it from any place else. And if it's in the departments, which I'm sure accounting people know, and I yield to Jason and Dan, who loves numbers, and our accounting people, see, I'm talking this way, no conversation, that money inside the departments is good as long as you stay under that. It's bad when you don't have enough. And so they've never come to us, as far as I know, in the years that I've seen these things, that they've come to where we were ever in the negative. So we should be grateful, and we are being good stewards, and our staff's being good stewards, that these overages are all going down to our savings to do big things so we can plan things like possible raises for staff if that comes forward to us, or some other big things that we need to do. I mean, we can't act like we've done everything. We are doing all the things that we plan to do all the time, and we're always moving forward, thank goodness, with what we have. So I just want to make a statement that it's a good thing that you guys are spending well, and that we have plus to go to the very end, to that high tune with our tax rate going down, still accomplishing the things that we say we're going to accomplish and that we agree to as goals. And yet we can still do other great things that come in front of us and use the money that we have now as that overage. So I don't think there's nothing shady about it, that it's sitting there and that we don't know about it so up front. We should just be glad that they're coming to us and saying, hey, by the way, we don't have a problem. We actually have a good amount of money that we can use for the taxpayers to do great things in this city that need to be done and that are always that to do to get forward. So I don't want it to sound like, that it's bad that we have these overages. We should be, and I'm not looking that way, not a conversation. It's a good thing. Just want to comment that it's a good thing.
The other big thing that stood out to me is that you gave back $117.5 on street repairs. Why did we not? Are all of our streets up tip-top shape? They're not. I can tell you a list of stuff that needs to be done in Lakeland, and it's by far not as important as some of the other places. But yet we budgeted $175,000. You spent $45,000. Was that because we didn't have the people to do it, or we weren't committed to actually doing these projects? $117.5 on street repairs.
At this time, while you wait for an answer, I'm going to ask you to follow decorum and raise your hand to be a speaker. All right. I'm very, very unhappy with this decorum, and maybe when we get a new system, it will be better, but I am asking all of you to get back in line. So, do you have an answer to that question?
I was looking back through.
Oh, wait, excuse me, Chris has an answer. All right.
I may have an answer. When we budget these things, we're basing it on historical trends, and we're doing this in May, June, July, and August of the previous year. So just for an example, this year, I budgeted for us to have a full and complete fire marshal / code enforcement department salaries of $235,000. Well, obviously, we didn't have a full and complete department for the entire year, so we have $129,000 left over. In May, June, July, August, September of last year, if I'd have said, you know what, I want to budget $90,000 because I guarantee you we're not going to have a full and complete department, all of you would have laughed me off this podium. And that's what we do when we figure out these expenditures. We're budgeting conservatively so that we don't go over numbers, so that we don't come to you and say, we're really, really sorry, but we messed up and we spent way too much money this year. We didn't budget for any of it. We would much rather come to you and say, hey, we over budgeted a little bit. We saved a bunch of money on expenditures. We would like to move that money from those expenditures that we didn't use and maybe put it into capital assets so our citizens don't have to pay for a bond issuance in 3 years. Maybe we put an extra $1 million in there this year, an extra $1 million next year, and we can pay for the elevated water storage tank, or we can pay for some of these other capital projects without having to go out and say, hey, we need to raise your tax rate by 15 to 20 cents because we've actually used some of these monies that we've saved previously. That makes us the good stewards of their money. And that's why we err on the side of caution on expenditures and probably err on the side of caution in revenues as well, which is why we tend to go over in that one and stay under in the expenditures. And we just try to use the money that we save as efficiently and as best that we can for our citizens, just not to say that, hey, we took your tax dollars and we're sitting on this gigantic nest egg now. We're going to utilize every dollar that we can in the most effective and prudent way that we can.
Dan?
Well, just to answer the question, there are two things in the Public Works area that we were discussing. One is capital outlay for street reconstruction. That is budgeted at $300,000. Those are the things that we work with the county. We hopefully work with the county in order to get overlaid. That is anticipated to be mostly materials. The county brings their equipment. If we have to rent equipment, then it'll come out of that line item as well. The $175,000 line item is actually street repairs. That's potholes, that's materials, that's other things. And you're right, we spent roughly $45,000 out of that $175,000. We didn't do as many street repairs or potholes or other things that could have funded. But you're right, there's $117,000 of excess council-approved expenditures that we didn't use.
Yes, sir.
Decor.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Chris, I'm going to ask you a question, and then while you're looking up the answer to this, I'll have a statement. Would you be able to pull up the number for, as of, with this year-end budget cleanup, what our ending fund balance is going to be in the general fund? So while you look for that, and I think, Mayor, my statement would be that, of course, the budget's ever evolving. Things are very fluid. And that's why you look at things on a week-by-week, month-by-month basis, because you never know, a Hurricane Harvey could happen again. And that completely changes around how you're reallocating your budget. But I think to Councilman Albert's point, having additional insight, if a majority of this council deems it appropriate, to say, why are these items less than what we budgeted? And getting some information there and saying, how are we refining it going into the future? Because when the public looks into this and they see that we are budgeting for a certain amount, but we're not spending what we budget for, that's a tough pill to swallow, because they ask, I know they ask me, I'm not sure who else they ask, what are you doing with our dollars if it's less than what you said you were going to do it for? And Chris, do you have that number for the unused in the general fund? I believe it's somewhere right around $9 million.
Actually, let's see. That's about 8.75 million. But I don't think that as including the transfers yet, because we were waiting to make sure that we have the approvals to transfer the money. So if we continue with about the 1.2 million in transfers, you're probably looking at closer to 7.5 million.
And so, Mayor, and this is to speak to Councilmember Haynes' point, it's not a bad thing that you necessarily spend less than projected, because that means you're being wise with your dollars, you're spending prudently, you're being conservative there. I think that the difficult pill to swallow is that while the tax rate is going down, people across our city are seeing their tax payments to the city increase depending on what your appraisal is. And then when they see that you have 7.75 million sitting in unused funds, and then when they see that you're not spending what you said that you were going to spend, and they see that in combination with all of that, that their tax payment has been increasing since at a minimum 2017, that's a tough thing. I mean, I've had countless residents that have reached out to me that are retired, especially, that have said, I don't know if I can continue living in the city. It's just, I'm on a fixed income, and anytime $20, $30, $40, and with all the other tax entities coming into play, I think it's just difficult to swallow there. So, I agree with Councilman Albert's point, Mayor, going forward, if there can be some additional context, especially how we are taking the history of last year's budget and refining future budgets, especially as to why there's the differences in expenditures. That makes sure that, it's that ever-evolving process as we move into the future as well. Thank you, Mayor.
I just have to say something to that. If you have an appraisal for your home that has gone up and you are paying more taxes, it has nothing to do with the balance that is left in the city budget. It's a fact of life and a good thing that your home is being appraised at a better value. And unfortunately, maybe your tax rate has gone up 20, even up to 4, I don't know, I'm not going to even guess. But, these are not equal. You don't put one of those equations into the other one, as far as I'm concerned. And I think that if your house is appraising, or your value has gone up on your house, our tax rate has gone down. We've done as much as we can do about that. And I think that with all the work that we have to do in this city, I think definitely we can always, tighten it up and look at it a little differently. But I think with as much involvement as we have and movement as we have going on in this city, it is absolutely difficult beyond reason to come up with these tightened budget numbers and certainly I think that they should stay at a situation where they're overages rather than being short. And I think that I just don't think one thing equates to the other. What did you have to say, Chris?
To speak to Councilmember Davis's point, we have in our policies that we would like to keep a fund balance of around 20 to 25%. However, most auditors will tell you should have a 6-month buffer in your fund balance. Well, if we have a $13 million general fund this year, that means we need at least 6.5 to have that six-month buffer. So you're talking 7.5 is the estimate that I just gave you. You're just $1 million over your 6-month buffer. That's one way you can explain it to the citizens and let them know, hey, while we try to keep it as low as possible, we don't want to cut ourselves to the bone where we have just 20% of our fund balance and we have to spend a major amount for this disaster that comes through. So 6.5 right now would be good if you talk to most auditors. We cut it a little further and try to get closer to 20 to 25%. That doesn't mean we should be at 20 to 25.
And what was our rating from the auditors?
Perfect last year. And to Councilmember Albert's request, the reports that I give you, that 40-page novel that I send to you every month, should have year-to-date spending column and a budgeted column. So you're seeing the same thing that I am, and I'm seeing when they're possibly going to go over. And if you would like to come by and talk or send us an email and say, what is the deal with this? Or vice versa, if you see one that says, why aren't we spending enough money? I can give you answers on each one of those because I see the same things that you're seeing, and I'm trying to prepare for them. Sometimes I just can't do anything about it until the end of the year when I figure out where I'm going to have to take the money from.
Larry?
Motion to approve.
I second.
All those in favor? All those opposed? The motion carries 5-2. Thank you.
Mayor, I don't know if you want to take item 8 on the consent agenda out of order for the folks that are here on the only remaining person.
I was just going to suggest that. Yeah. Makes no difference. You live 45 miles from here, but it makes no difference at all, right? Okay. All right. How about we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Make a motion.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Have a nice drive. Listen to a good podcast. Oh, you're still here. Yeah. Okay, then we'll also move that. All right. Let's do item number 8 then. Does anybody have an objection to moving item number 8 so we can get Russ on the road? All right, item number 8, consideration and possible action to approve the 8th Amendment, a development agreement between the City of Manvel, Pomona Investment, LLC, Brazoria County Municipal District 39, and Brazoria County Municipal District 40, excuse me. All right,
Mayor and council members, obviously Pomona, as with many things, changes. And one of the things that the developer has come to the city about is the phasing of the construction of mostly their half of Croy Parkway from Pomona Parkway down to County Road 58. And then there's a very small piece of Kirby Drive that's kind of at the end of the development, past the main entrances into the sections that are abutting it, and it simply dead ends into a piece of property that the developer doesn't own. And what we have done is there's 2 little sections in here that talk about the phasing of Croy Parkway and of Kirby. Generally, what it does is the developer or the districts will be still obligated to do it. As the adjoining pieces of property are platted, any required right-of-way is going to be dedicated during that platting process. And then if the county, the city, don't construct either Kirby or Croy Parkway in the intervening time, the district or the developer will construct their half of Croy Parkway or Kirby no later than December 31st of 2028. So there's a mechanism in place, and in your packet, we sent you a draft from last week, and then Tammy included the cleaned up version that we finally got. And I apologize that it's almost exactly the same wording. What was included were maps that were as exhibits. So if you have any questions, we'll be happy to answer them. The other thing that is included in this is the developer is going to dedicate 2 pieces of property to the city. There's a small, about 1.25 acre triangle that's adjacent to Croy Park on the north side, right next to Mustang Bayou. And then there's a 3.5 acre piece of, or 3.3 acre piece of property that's on Croy Parkway down, not exactly opposite from the county annex, but it's in a close area. On the general plan of the development, it's listed as a public safety site. We talked with the ESD about the possibility of building something there. This is the dedication that would include that site as well. So be happy to answer any questions, and obviously someone is here from the developer as well.
yes, ma'am.
That's in David Linder's precinct. Yeah, Kirby and I believe it's all split by 288, so everything on the west side is
Right.
in David Linder's
It is.
precinct.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a quick question before anybody makes a motion. No motions? Okay. I had to, Larry. Russ, thank you for.
I would have called the question.
I
just
know,
to
I
let you
know,
know.
I know.
was
I had to-
done too.
I had to poke there. I had to poke. It's all in jest. Two questions. Kyle or Russ, I'll go with Kyle. Could you speak to the amendment to 4.07, the park utility design? I think that's one item that, yeah, and I think that's a really intriguing one because bathrooms for parks are always a big thing.
They're not designing the bathrooms. What they're designing is the connections, the service connections from the water and sewer mains out on the main road that would come onto the city's property, onto Croy Park. Their engineer is going to design those. There's some specifics that the developer and the MUD have for what those connections have to be. If a home builder is building a house in Pomona, they have to follow the same things. Since the MUD engineer is the one that makes sure that all of those things are done that way, he's going to design it for us. Anything that comes onto the property, the bathrooms, all the rest of that is all the city's responsibility. So when we make the sewer connection to the sewer main, we're going to abandon the septic system. It's going to be the city's responsibility to cut it off, pull the septic tank out, So anything that's on the property is our responsibility. The connections are going to be designed by the mud engineer.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Kyle. And then Russ, I just wanted to ask you, appreciate you being willing to help with that design there, but is there anything that you would like to highlight? Are you guys good with this agreement as well?
We appreciate that.
And that's all that I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay.
Mayor, there's one other thing, and I forgot to mention it. The 3.3 acre site is also going to be served with utilities and drainage by the mud. And they're going to extend that to the city's piece of property.
Thank you. Right. Right. Thank you, Russ. Again.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the Eighth Amendment to the Development Agreement between the City of Manvel, Pomona Investment LLC, Brazoria County Municipal District, and MUD 40.
I'll second that. All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. All right, consideration and possible action to approve the license and service agreement between Tyler Technologies and the City of Manvel and authorize the city manager to execute the agreement. Chris?
Hello, I'm back. This is hopefully better news. Ever since I got here, and I think right before I got here, there's been a push to get away from the software that we're using right now for our financials and for our utility billing. It's based on a Microsoft Access database, and it's really getting kind of full right now. All three of us in the finance department have had issues with it slowing down, bogging down. We've had to do workarounds. I think now they're updating with a patch because they're no longer going to support our Microsoft Access 2017. Just all kinds of things that are pointing to the direction of we need something a little bigger, a little better, a little more suited for what we do. In comes Tyler Technologies. I've used them at Angleton. We're using them in the court right now for their side of the software, so this just makes sense. We also had a finance personnel who went to a city a little further east who told me vehemently that we were doing things the wrong way. We needed to get Tyler because they have it and it is awesome. So we went and shopped out with several other options. Most of them wanted to offer us something similar to what we already had, which was the Microsoft Access platform. We said no to those. A lot of others wanted to give us things, bells and whistles that we absolutely did not need. Tyler was one of the few, if not the only, that would give us the modules that we specifically needed and get rid of everything else unless we wanted them at a future time down the road. That's one of the benefits of having Tyler Technologies. Most of their pieces are platform pieces, and they can install them or delete them at any time if you need them. So if at some point down the road we need extras, they're willing to come in. And it just all made sense, and we got a quote and a license agreement and all kinds of fun legal stuff that we included in the packet for you. And staff would strongly recommend and really, really like to have this software so that we can give you better reports and improve our productivity.
Thank you. Any discussion? Yes, sir.
Did you look at me when he said reports?
No.
Okay.
Discussion. I looked at you then.
Chris, thank you for this update. Two questions that I have. One of the items that concerns, I want to get you guys the software. Overall, I think this is going to be great. One item that does concern me from a cybersecurity perspective, it's in section D, item number 2, and this is on page 5 in the proposal, I guess they provided us. And it just talks about, we will be required to purchase new releases, and that includes the purchasing of fix enhancements, and the patches is the item that concerns me. Cyber attacks, we're continuing to see those uptick, even for small municipalities where they send out ransomware, malware, they just try to see whoever's vulnerable. And so if Tyler Tech Software determines we need to issue a patch because we have a vulnerability based off of a new type of Trojan horse that's out there, what are they saying to us is going to be the cost for us to acquire a patch in that scenario?
Most of the times, there were no costs. When I was at Angleton, it wasn't like they were trying to nickel and dime us to death. If there was something that was legitimately wrong that they needed to have fixed, they generally just push that out to us for free. If you're doing things on your side that cause errors, yeah, they tend to get grumpy about that and they may charge you, but with our IT staff and our experience in using this software, I don't think we're going to run into that issue at all. So most of the time it was just them saying, oh, well, this came out, we have to push this out to you, here's your fix. Not a charge, not, like I said, they're not looking to nickel and dime you to death. They're making good enough money off of the platform and the volume of customers that they get anyway. So most of those times, I don't recall a time ever where they said, we're going to charge you for this fix.
Mayor, just one other comment. Actually, we're not buying the ongoing maintenance and support services. If we need it, we can get it as a sort of an add-on, and I think they use it as time and materials basis. But in addition to that, we are getting patches. That's where the software fixes or anything that come out. It's not something that's required because we're not getting the maintenance. It's automatically included with the purchase of the software. We're not purchasing the maintenance portion of it. If we need it, we can get it and be charged whatever that time and basis cost.
Okay, perfect. So patches we
Yes,
covered there, and I'm
patches
interested
are
to
included.
hear from Councilmember Albert here because I know this is a past area of expertise for him. But one question that I had is, with this software, and if my memory is just foggy, I apologize, but I don't believe that we went through an RFP process for this software. Is that correct?
That's correct. We can actually use this as a sole vendor because we are trying to piggyback onto our court, and no other system is actually going to mesh and go cohesively with Tyler Technologies other than Tyler Technologies.
Appreciate that clarification. Thank you, Mayor.
Chris, how is IT going to back this up for you so that if something happens at Tyler, you have access to the data?
We actually have, I think they have all the servers, all the information is backed up on our servers, I believe. They have the ability to dial in and work our systems if something goes wrong on our end, but I think all the information is actually stored on our servers, which is why when I got here, Garrett purchased a larger server for the finance department because he was anticipating going to something a little bit bigger that would need more storage space.
As long as you're going to have some sort of local backup so that if some Yahoo in their data center screws something up, you still have access to stuff. Good.
Actually, they're working on two backups. The one that's here, we're talking about the remote backup that's out at the lift station out in DeBello, and then IT is working on the backup in the cloud. So that would actually be backed up 2 different places in addition to the stuff that we have here.
Okay, the next question I have for you, Kyle, is do we have a travel purchasing policy on how much an employee or somebody on the staff can spend on, their per diem or having to use state rates or anything like that for?
I think we do. I think it's in the personnel policy.
So the reason I ask is I saw the travel expenses these guys have, and they're very generous to themselves for what we will reimburse for travel. Where I work, the vendor's not permitted to be as generous. They have to follow the same policy that we have. So I'm not going to micromanage you on that, shocker. But I would recommend that we look at being able to cap those, because right now they could have somebody living internationally, and if they travel more than 6 hours to come and see you, we're going to pay for them to travel here. And that's
Understand. One of the things that I think the police chief had dealt with when we were swapping over to the Central Square, there was a lot of travel costs associated with setting it up and also training that he actually called him up and said, I don't need you. We already know we can do this over the phone, or you've already done it, for us. We'll train the other people that are on the staff. So we'll be happy to take that into account and see if there's a way that we can minimize the costs associated with that.
Yeah, I won't stand in your way on this one, but in the future, I would consider that we look at incorporating some of those so that we can cap those costs.
Anybody else?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the license and service agreement between Tyler Technologies and the city of Manvel.
Second it.
All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Consideration and possible action to approve Resolution 2021-R-31, a resolution of the City of Manvel designating the casting of its votes for the candidate and/or candidates for the Board of Directors of the Brazoria County Appraisal District.
I'll start with, I don't know any of these people. I went out to the Brazoria County Appraisal District website to figure out who is currently on the board compared to the 8 people that are candidates for those offices, and I'll just kind of read them out. Gail Robinson is a current member. Tommy King is a current member. Susan Spohr is a current member, and George Sanders is a current member. Those 4 are current members and are looking to be elected to their positions on the BCAD board. Hang on just a second, let me get there. Tammy, do you know how many votes that they have? I think
Mhm.
one.
You actually have 31 votes, and then Arnetta Murray and Will Kennedy are council members for the city of Iowa Colony. Tommy King used to be the prior school superintendent for AISD, and retired, and then has been on this board since.
I don't mean it that we're going to be overshadowed, but Alvin ISD has, I think, hundreds of votes. We have 31, so,
Pearland too.
yeah, City of Pearland. It's all based on the ad valorem value in Brazoria County, so use your 31 votes wisely. I don't know if they're going to make that big of a difference.
All right, do I have somebody who wants to present a slate for council to vote on? Anybody?
Yeah, I'll go forward with it. So what I would like to see is we give Arnetta Murray, we put our votes between Arnetta Murray, Will Kennedy, Tommy King, and George Sanders.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Thank you, Councilmember Davis.
Mayor, just a point of clarification real quick. Since it's an odd number of votes, do you need us to specify who would get the one more, or
That would be nice, otherwise I was going to give it to the first candidate that you mentioned.
just give it to the first candidate then? That's fine. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
All right. Consideration and possible action to approve Resolution 2021-R-32, a resolution approving an interlocal participation agreement by and between the City of Manvel and Goodbye Purchasing Cooperative, providing that this resolution shall become effective from and after its passage.
Chris, do you want to talk about this, or I'll start with it?
I can start with this one, I guess. Whenever we purchase through Buy Board, some of our automotive vehicles that we were purchasing, some of the companies came to us and said, we're no longer using Buy Board, we're using Good Board, or Goodbye, sorry. And they need us to fill out a point of contact, and they also require a resolution from our council before they will let us be a part of their super secret clubhouse so that we can get the good deals on the automobiles. So we have to have the forms filled out, we have to name a point person, and you have to approve us. And I think they actually take a look at the information when they get it, and they have to approve us as well. So hopefully we're good enough for them, and we would like to use these because we have purchased several vehicles trying to use this particular service.
All right, do we have?
Just one other thing, obviously, all of the equipment or vehicles, anything that's purchased through this goes through the state purchasing requirements, just like Buy Board does. So we don't actually have to go out for RFPs because they've already complied with all of the state purchasing requirement laws.
All right, any discussion? If
Move to
not,
approve.
oh, okay. And I'll second. All those in favor? Those opposed, and we have a 7-0 vote once again. Consideration and possible action on the 2022-2023 TCAP Board of Directors ballot. My goodness.
The Texas Coalition for Affordable Power is the organization that we contract with to buy bulk power for the city itself. You have 7 votes. There are 8 people that are running for positions on the TCAP board. I can tell you I know 4 of them. The city managers of Edna, Wichita Falls, Tomball, and McAllen. I do not know the city manager of Kennedy, and I do not know the deputy city manager from the city of DeSoto. If you were to ask for a recommendation, I would say use your 7 and take one of the 2, either the city manager of Kennedy or the deputy city manager of DeSoto, and not vote for them. Well, not vote for, you have 7 votes total. There are 8 people running.
It looks like we have 9 here.
Oh.
If I'm,
I'm sorry, you're right.
okay.
You're right.
Mayor, may I ask a question?
Yes.
Kyle, the incumbents on the board perform during the winter storm in February? Would they have had any sort
They
of-
would not have, what they do, TCAP actually negotiates long-term contracts for power. They don't actually do anything in the way of making sure that it is provided. All they are is it's a broker for many cities, some other public entities, but they don't, all they do is they deal with the price for it. They don't actually deal with the delivery of it.
Appreciate that. Mayor, I guess I'll put forward a slate again. I say we go with the incumbents, which would give us 6, and then let's go with, just go with the incumbents, because Karen's an incumbent as well. So just vote for the 7 incumbents again. That'll be my slate.
I second.
All those in favor? All right, that's a 7-0 vote as well. Update on May 7, 2022 special election in regards to the proposition relating to the amendment of the Home Rule Charter.
Well, we do have a draft of the ordinance calling the election and the ballot language. We're a little premature in taking it to you yet because there's certain things that have to be filled in, all of the dates, the amounts of the election officials and things that are actually done through the county. And I think Tammy has her meeting with the county before Christmas, so she hasn't gotten that information yet to put into the ordinance. But we would be having it ready for the first meeting in January, or however, if you want to delay it even after that. But it's pretty much ready to go now, and maybe Tammy can fill you in more about what's going on with the county.
So the actual deadline to file for the election for our meetings would be February the 7th, so we're quite early in the process to call a special election or even our general election. So I had it penciled in for the 3rd, January the 3rd's meeting for council, which still put us quite early. I'll meet with the county, they'll go over what the plans are for the joint election, and then they'll send us all the timeframes and the voting locations. So I don't have any of that information yet.
Yes, ma'am.
May I ask that we have a couple of meetings before that? Because I did ask Kyle and Bobby some questions about the language that I want to discuss when they're ready to answer my questions. So could we have it in like the first meeting in January? So in case we have to discuss it, we'll have the last meeting in January before February to file?
Yes, and we've got, the items on the agenda, we've got the proposed language. Is that something they
I
can
don't
discuss this
see
evening?
it on mine, like as an attachment or anything. I'm not seeing that. It says no attachments on mine. Do you see that too? Like no PDF or anything? Yeah, that's why I was asking to be able, I don't see it.
I can stick that out there right now. I mean, the ordinance is in its draft version, so there is lots of blanks, but the actual language that was drafted for the proposition is in there, and I can read it to you if you want to know what it
No,
is, or I can
that's
stick it in
okay.
there right now for you.
You don't have to do that right now. If I just, again, want some time to prepare because I'm asking questions about the language, and I would like to have at least a workshop the very first time, and then right before we take it to February, just in case.
So we
that make sense?
sure will have an item on the January the 3rd agenda. We can do both. We can have the item to call the election. You can discuss it, you can change that language on there, or you can table it until the next one. Like I said, it's not due until February the 7th at the deadline.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, do we have any council comments, council events, or city issues you want to talk about? Announce?
Do we have an update on the parade?
So,
There is no
now
parade.
the email,
I didn't see
there
the,
is no parade. The email went with the council agenda email.
didn't see
It's the
that.
last item on there. So due to circumstances with the events board, from family issues to medical issues, one being out of town, it only left one board member that was able to commit to do anything with the parade. So they did not.
I didn't think we had time to do it. Not when they were meeting so late, so. Yeah, I'm sorry, I didn't see it in the email. I saw the attachment, but I didn't see the whole email.
Well, and the only reason I said it like that is because it's a huge disappointment. I think that I think that we need to review what's going on with some of our committees and look and see. I just think that had we known, as I know that Council Member Tyson had indicated, had we known far enough ahead, we could have taken the initiative among, several of us.
Well, and that's
To-
why I was surprised when Tammy had said they were meeting at the end of November, and I thought, gosh, pre-pandemic, we had already planned this by August, so I was concerned that we were even gonna be able to make it anything realistic when they weren't gonna be meeting till so late, so.
Well, without throwing anybody or all of them under the bus.
I will say they were very remorseful, and the issues that they were having were completely beyond any of their control.
Well, and that's why I say, we don't want to throw any individuals under the bus, but we will express the fact that we're very disappointed and hope that, in the future, we can have a little more notification, because there are those of us who know that so many things like this represent the city and represent us. I even made a statement this morning that I had come by City Hall and that I just kind of thought, geez, it's black. Why can't we have some sort of festive look to City Hall? And of course, they had already thought of that. But the problem is they can't get outdoor lights. They can't get industrial lights anywhere. It's just, had we only known. Yeah, well, let's talk.
And Mayor, I went to the Pearland Christmas tree lighting and then also their parade, and they threw down the gauntlet, and their council members were harassing me, saying, "Oh, where's Manvel's parade? What's Manvel doing?" So next year we're gonna have to come back.
Well, and that's why I say it represents us as well.
And I'm going to say, as somebody who does this as a profession and sitting on council, I will never not speak up about that. That is important to me. It's happening next year.
So there we have it, and we'll talk about those lights. Yeah, because it's dark out there.
I guess I do have one small thing
Yes,
to
sir.
bring up, and mostly because I think it's a big deal for us in Lakeland. But the development is officially over in Lakeland. They are completely built out. So that project is done, and the HOA was turned over to the residents at the meeting last month. So we're
Congratulations.
very happy about not being underneath the developer's thumb anymore.
Good.
It was interesting because there was an item on the MUD's agenda Wednesday. There's an executive session to deal with anticipated legal litigation or something, and the possibility of hiring Reed Wilson comes up. So it seems a bit odd that at the end of the whole thing, they would have an executive session dealing with anticipated litigation and the idea of hiring somebody that is a big MUD attorney.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the MUD part, but the HOA part, we no longer have to deal with that, but
That's good.
Good.
thanks.
Okay. Tomorrow is a significant day. It is Pearl Harbor Day, and I saw this morning that there were, I'm sure there's more than this, but there were 5 members that were able to make their way to Hawaii. And I will tell you, if you've never been, it is one of the most solemn and encompassing tributes. It is remarkable, and your allegiance to our United States will be benefited if you can make that stop. It's pretty remarkable. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn?
I'll second. All those in favor? All those opposed? All righty, we're out of here. It is. It is.